Well,
You
there is
we see why
it's a
women
context
celebrate. We watch
standpoint though.
women celebrate a baby showers instead of celebrating marriage. That's what ladies are willing to do. They don't. I mean, they don't care about marriage no more. They
But
don't.
does that come back to the man picking the right one though? Like I don't mean to be the asshole here, but it
No, I
sounds
mean,
like if
is
the
it trying to
priorities
pick
are
right one?
off and the man sets the priorities, because we agree the man sets the priority. If she's not willing to follow, did we pick wrong to begin with?
When I think about kind of like the world that we live in and just how deprived we are of emotional intelligence, and then we couple that with people and interpersonal relationships, this is a universe based on law of attraction. And so energy is really important. And, when you talk about emotional intelligence and we look at the divorce rate being as high as it is, regardless of who it's being initiated by, the divorce rates are insane. And if it's not divorce rates, then, it's people just having kids together being the new marriage and then kind of going their separate ways. And so when we talk about a lack of emotional intelligence and how that relates to marriages, for me, that's the basis of the conversation. Emotional intelligence isn't something that we're born with. It's something that we have to learn. You go through the stages of being dependent. Then the next stage is independent. The following stage is interdependence. And a lot of us get stuck on the independent stage, and then we want to get into a relationship or into a marriage that really fosters interdependency, and we don't have the emotional intelligence that to actually foster that relationship long term. And so when I'm looking at the divorce rates, it's also bringing up for me a lot of just the lack of knowledge that people have in terms of how to actually choose the person that you are going to be standing beside for what you call the rest of your life, and how, what to actually look for. And are you actually ready for the marriage? And so, for me, it's really a lack of emotional intelligence as to why, the collective is really suffering with interdependent relationships.
Della, I think you touched on I think you touched on something very important, and it goes back to what I was saying. Do younger men especially, do they know what it means to be a husband? And do women know what it means to be a wife? Like, do we really know, especially with, as Mr. Letgo was saying earlier, the single mother households being rampant in our community from the mid 80s all the way until the mid 2000s, and we're now
Yeah, it's
finally,
still a problem.
and I think we're kind of coming out of that. I think we are learning that you need two parents in the household. I think we're coming to a precipice where we're going to cross over. I think, and I hope, and I pray. But do young men and women have the skills, and do they know how to pick? Like you touched on both of those, and I think that's where the high divorce rates come from. No, they don't know how to pick. No, they don't know what they're looking for. No, they don't know how to be it themselves. And that's both genders. That's not a male thing or a woman thing. That is both. And we have to figure out how we treat we as men train the young men coming up, and how you as ladies train the younger ladies coming up to be what they need to be in order to maintain a household.
Completely agree with what you just said. There's no better way to show young men and young women how to be a husband or how to be a wife other than modeling, right? So we have to take leadership and take the initiative. It goes back to, I know what this is Inez was saying. What is the value in marriage? Um, I would beg to differ that marriage is just for the children. How many relationships, how many people are married and don't have children? Then if what you say is um, indeed true, then what is the purpose for a couple, a man and a woman, to get married if they don't plan on having kids? there's so much more to marriage than just the kids. Sometimes that's the problem, right? If you get married and the attention goes solely to the kids, then, that's that kind of, and of course, I'm going based on Christianity at this point. Who comes first? Your spouse. Your spouse comes first, and then it's the kids. So when you get out of that order, then of course there is going to be chaos. But we're living in a world where that's just not the reality for most people. When you're talking about many people have gotten divorced and then you get remarried, you've got a blended family, then all those things come into play. But the order in that God speaks of, your husband or your wife is first, and then the kids. Now, do children benefit from marriage? Absolutely. But the value of marriage is so much more than just the children.
God is
We're
first.
just saying the benefactor.
God is first.
A lot of these women
Celebrate
put the
the
kids
kids.
before their husband, though. I was on the
Agreed.
show last
Agreed.
Thursday, and we talked
That's the
about this.
problem.
A
That's
woman would
exactly
sell out her husband over her kids
Agreed.
because she felt like her kid was a threat. She was willing to sell her husband out. And Mr. Lego was on that show, and it wasn't even talking about a criminal thing. It wasn't even a criminal aspect of it, even though Mr. Lego bought power and made it a whole criminal damn thing and pushed a criminal agenda with it. But it didn't have to be. But she was ready to sell out her husband. The hell with him. I'm worried about these kids. But your husband comes first. So a lot of women's priorities are messed up.
Well,
These-
it's a context standpoint, though.
Women celebrate a baby showers instead of celebrating marriage. That's what ladies are willing to do. They don't care about marriage no more.
But
don't.
does that come back to the man picking the right one though? Like I don't mean to be the asshole here, but it sounds like if the priorities are off and the man sets the priorities, because we agree the man sets the priority. If she's not willing to follow, did we pick wrong to begin with? Is
it ain't no good
on
women out
us
here
or
then.
the lady?
There's not no good women out here then. Because you can't tell them shit.
That's Rob.
You got people even promote. We don't need a man. What do we need a man for?
So as
was on a show Sunday talking about that bullshit.
All right, so
who said they don't need a man Sunday?
Can you hear me?
Who?
Go ahead, Marcus.
Okay. So I'm at a leadership school that everything falls at the feet of us as men. If you're gonna lead, you gotta accept responsibility for everything that come with it. If I lead y'all in the battle and we get killed, that was my fault. If I lead this family in the wrong direction and we become homeless, that was my fault. If these kids is failures, that was my fault. And my wife fails through me because she was following my instructions on how I wanted these kids raised. If I'm not willing to accept the responsibility for what's coming, then I can't call myself no leader in good faith. I got to be a partner. It's got to be a partnership at that, and we can share responsibility in these failures. But I'm going to accept the brunt of that. My whole life, I've always accepted that role, and I know exactly what comes with it. You know what I'm saying? And in doing so, when women get in line or meet men like that, they tend not to have these issues that a lot of the men on the internet, none of the men on the panel, but a lot of the men on the internet espouse sometimes. It's good women out here. Some of them just don't trust people. They don't feel we display some of the characteristics they need to see in order for them to acquiesce.